the instruments were different as well. What are the challenges for today's musicians when playing them?
Yes, that's the nice thing about early music, because you know that sometimes modern composers, they write for prepared piano, they change the piano in some way, and we don't have to do that. I mean, we have new sounds with these instruments which weren't used for centuries, and then now we are starting to use them or start reconstructing them, and we get another sound which is somehow new for our ears at least, and that's a very interesting thing.
Using period instruments, which means they are built like they have been in these times. The stringed instrument didn't change so much than, for example, wind instruments. You can really see it on the wind instruments, but also here is quite a big change. For example, on this viola, it's a tenor violin, Pretor is called, and it's quite bigger than the violas which are used then in the classical music. So it's really thick, and it has a much stronger sound because it's bigger. And they were really used in these times because it was the people were thinking more in concerts, so in family of instruments. And in the classical music it changes a bit. And in this polyphonic music also the lower parts are quite important, or much more important. And later on it changes to be more one or two high voices and the bass line, and then we are really in the Baroque period. And therefore, for example, these instruments really change, but also the violins are built a bit different with gut strings, and also the bows are very different. It looks very different to a modern bow, and yeah, therefore there's a big difference for us to play. And also the techniques, for example, with this bow, I play it with the undergrip. So really the thumb on the hair, not like that, which then changes in the 17th century already. And I also try not to keep the viola really with the head, because here I disturb a bit of the sound. So the sound cannot really develop if I have it stuck here. Small changes of techniques.
Interesting part about these instruments is that, of course, we don't know if we would like the sound of the instruments back then, but of course, on the other hand, most instruments, most violins that are used today by well-known soloists are made in the 17th or 18th century. So the instruments were obviously very good. They were the best instruments that ever existed, I mean, concerning violins.
For me, that I am a violin player, it's very important the bow, the way to play, the difference that you can choose. You can play the different ways you can play with this bow, which is lighter.
Also, today we use different techniques, but back then the technique was even more different from city to city, or at least from country to country. Players used different, for example, bow grips, how they take the bow, and of course also the pitch was much different. Today we have almost all the classical music is in the same pitch. I mean, the modern orchestras, they all play in 4/43, and back then, for example, in Italy there were many different pitches in the range of a minor third, for example, and that's very important to know, because we have singers, then we have to know at which pitch the music was sung, so the singer can, for example, if it's a very low tessitura, then we can think, okay, perhaps it was very, very high, but we have to think about that. We don't just take a certain pitch and do the music at that pitch, and it doesn't really work very well. And then, but we have to find some material about how the pitch was and so on.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have come far on our journey through the beauties of early music, but there is still a lot to get to know. You are kindly invited to join us for the next part of the show, where the musicians of the Harmonia Antiqua Labacensis ensemble will be sharing their views on the importance of interpretation.
If you do once more Rungi.
From 60?
56. 57.